Namo Bhagavate Ramakrishna. Om. Salutations to Bhagwan Ramakrishna. Golap Ma, Holy Mother's guardian. Let us, for a few moments, sit down quietly and try to think about that immortal soul within us. Om, peace, peace, peace. Golap Sundari Devi. In other words, Golap is rose, Sundari is beautiful, beautiful rose. And Devi is a goddess. If you notice, there's a saying of Swamiji, there's a quote, each soul is potentially divine. So each woman is potentially a goddess. So Devi is always mentioned after the name. So that's what, a beautiful rose. And about her, we'll start with one incident. It was in Benares, that is Varanasi. Holy Mothers, they were the few disciples. And devotees were coming, streaming to make obeisance to Holy Mother. They were heard about Holy Mother. So one woman comes, and she had not been acquainted with either her picture or anything. She just heard about her. So she comes, and her eyes fall on Golap Ma. And she thought, probably this is the Holy Mother, and she goes. So Golap, she says, pointing out to Holy Mother, who was sitting quietly with a long veil round over her head. And the devotee goes towards Holy Mother, and Holy Mother was a little playful. She said, no, that's the right one. And the devotee again, she comes. The Golap Ma, with slight annoyance. So again she comes to the Holy Mother to make obeisance, and Holy Mother also still in the playful mood. No, it's time. A couple of times back and forth. Then Golap Ma very sharply says, can't you distinguish a divine face from a human one? The woman, devotee, at last discovered the elusive grace and charm of the Holy Mother's face. When we look at Holy Mother, it looks to us human. No. It is only through Holy Mother's grace that you will be able to detect that divine face of the Divine Mother. And the very fact that Golap Ma could, through her divine sight, detect Holy Mother, divine face, distinguished completely from a human face, that also proves her heights of spirituality. So the Holy Mother was sometimes like this, a little playful. And as Holy Mother's guardian, Golap Ma was stern. As we have mentioned about Sister Devamata, who was Laura Glenn, who wrote in days in an Indian monastery, she says, quote, "My chief companionship was with the devotees surrounding the Holy Mother. Golap, tall and powerful in build, conservative, orthodox, and uncompromising, and acted as the gendarme, that's a guard, to Mother, protecting her against intrusion, guarding her safety, even scolding her when she thought Mother was growing careless in some observances and too indulgent towards her foreign children. She showed me always the greatest kindness." And you see, what happens is, here she was so stern and orthodox. She had, as they call, a stentorian voice. She could shout anybody down. And she was imposing. No wonder she became Holy Mother's guardian. There is a misconception for many years, especially in India, that women were kind of not eligible for higher forms of yoga or for intense spiritual practices. Why? Oh no, their bodies are delicate, etc., and they will not be able to stand the rigors of this spiritual disciplines. So they were given the devotional type of spiritual practices. Keep on doing this, you don't need to go. However, in these householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, in this series, we have seen Sri Ramakrishna's women devotees attaining very high states of yoga, so that old superstitions about a woman being incompetent to attain higher states of yoga, etc., all demolished for this time. In the Vedic age, of course, we had great sages. Now and then, some of them were female sages. Yes. And they also had intuited some of these Vedic hymns. So in this age, Sri Ramakrishna has opened up the gates to everybody, especially to women. And we have seen some, we will see her life. She had attained very high states of spiritualities. So we have this ordinary person, and she experienced bereavements after bereavements, deaths. She was married at a young age, like in those days, somewhere in 1840s. And so her parents had arranged a marriage. The husband was not well off, because in those days, under colonial rule, there was no question of getting rich. And then secondly, there's no question also of this class of people ever becoming rich, because their lives are supposed to be devoted only to spiritual practices, studies, worship, etc. They were not supposed to do any other thing. The husband died after a few years of their marriage, leaving her with two children, a son and daughter. The son died when he was young. That left a daughter. She grew up and she was married. And she too died after giving birth to a son. So here, this grief, death is inevitable. But when shocks after shocks come, one after the other, it's very difficult for the soul to absorb the shocks and overcome them. In that vacuum, when you feel everything is slipping between your fingers. And Swami Vivekananda says, you see everything that you've worked for slipping through your fingers. Nothing belongs to you. We know life is followed by death. In fact, life is another form of death. But when these facts come and hit you hard, the only way is to completely transform you. And this is what happened to Golap Ma. He was completely transformed. That vacuum was filled with her own spiritual, you can say, training and spiritual longing. Fortunately, she used to live in the neighborhood of Yogin Ma, another great woman disciple whom we have seen in the last series. And she took Golap Ma to Sri Ramakrishna at Dakshineshwar. So when she met him, she started unburdening her heart to him. And when she started unburdening her heart, Sri Ramakrishna, he says, touched her on the head. And she says, it was amazing. In a moment, my mind became calm and serene. I immediately laughed like a Gyani, that is, a person of wisdom. I felt I had come to this world to act in a play. Who is whose mother and who is whose daughter? In my childhood, I had played with cloth dolls, and after that I played with flesh and blood dolls. The world is nothing but a play with dolls. So why should I cry for my daughter? It's a glorious thing to weep for God. Such was the power of the Master. This is what, just a touch, completely transformed. Now, it's obvious that there must have been something in her to be awakened. Otherwise, if there's nothing and you might touch a person 20 times, nothing happens. So there was something which was dormant, and Sri Ramakrishna kind of awakened this wisdom. So we might say, yeah, the wisdom is innate in us. Yes, the wisdom is innate. Death had opened its doors, as it were, all the bereavements. And then Sri Ramakrishna's touch made all those things gush out. So this is how a person of knowledge sees the world. It's all a play. Everything is disjointed. It's our mind that makes all these connections and makes all these things systematic and coherent. Actually, there's nothing. So when this knowledge dawns, this is what they see. The vanity of all attachments and all earthly love, that is completely turned towards God. So she was greatly moved by the first meeting, and subsequently she kept on visiting him. So one time she had come, and in those days the women were kind of, still in the shadows of many things. She saw the room was full of people, men, and she was standing at the door. And Sri Ramakrishna noticed her. She had come and she was standing. And he's speaking about bereavements. He's talking about his boyhood friends. Ram said he had no children. He brought up his nephew, but the boy died. He told me this with a sigh, his eyes filled with tears. He was grief-stricken for his nephew. Then the Master said, a man came here the other day. He sat a few minutes and then said, let me go and see the moon face of my child. Yeah, moon-like face. Chandmukh, as they say. It's a very common. Sri Ramakrishna said, I couldn't control myself and said, get out, you fool. So you prefer your son's moon face to God's moon face. Imagine if this wouldn't have awakened that person, I don't know what would. Sri Ramakrishna himself says that you want to see your child's moon face. Get out, you fool. You don't want to see God's moon face, and God himself incarnated is sitting there and speaking about it. The truth is that God alone is real and all else unreal. Men, universe, house, children, all these are like the magic of a magician. The magician alone is real and is magic unreal. There. So it's obvious that he's directing these words to Golap Ma. God is like an ocean and the living beings are like bubbles. They are born here and then they die there. Children are like a few bubbles around a big one. God alone is real. Make an effort to cultivate love for God and find out the means to realize it. What will you gain by mere grieving? Golap Ma understood. She wanted to return home. It was a hot summer day. He said, go later on in the carriage. So now, but our senses and our mind simply can't figure it out that this is real. When the eye of wisdom is opened, you will take a very lofty view of your life and the universe and everything. Like you fly in an airplane and you look down, you get a different perspective of the same thing that you're seeing it at eye level. And especially if you're attached to a particular thing. So as you grow in wisdom and love for God, your perception of the world changes. So Sri Ramakrishna is asking Golap Ma to take that lofty view of life where everything else seems insignificant. Everything seems small. So after a few visits, Sri Ramakrishna introduced Golap Ma to Holy Mother. And he said, you should feed this Brahmin girl well. Sorrow is assuaged when the stomach is full. Sri Ramakrishna knew that when he was gone, the Holy Mother would need a companion. So one day, he spoke to her about Golap Ma. Keep your eyes on this woman. She will live with you permanently. And this is what happened. For the rest of her life, she was always with Holy Mother. Amazing. You know, it's very difficult to live with an incarnation. Very difficult. We think, oh, I wish I was born during that time, Holy Mother's time. I could have seen her. Really? You can't recognize it. She was appeared just like one of us. But to recognize and yet to live with that knowledge is extremely difficult. So you have to have had some, rock solid realization of Holy Mother's divinity, and yet you could look after the day-to-day affairs of Holy Mother. Yes, it's very difficult. You have to balance both these, the vast spiritual world, and you have to be practical in this world also. That speaks of a great spiritual stature. We have seen people who are so immersed in their spiritual life, they completely neglect this kind of. They just dismiss. There are some people who are completely enmeshed in this material world. They dismiss the spiritual life, spiritual, everything as nonsense. Oh, that doesn't exist. She could be on both levels. So she was Holy Mother's guardian. And also, she used to carry Sri Ramakrishna's food. Holy Mother used to cook food and bring it, and Golap Ma used to bring it to Sri Ramakrishna's room. She also used to live with Holy Mother because Holy Mother was living there alone. Imagine in those days that place was so deserted and there are no electric lights. Everything was dark after sundown. So she used to stay with Holy Mother in that small, tiny, you can say, room. Even today when you go there and you wonder, oh my God, how could they live like that? So one night she was sleeping there in that small room, Holy Mother, and Sri Ramakrishna, at the middle of the night, he woke up his nephew Ramlal. Hey, I'm hungry. And Sri Ramakrishna's nephew saw that there was nothing around, no fruits, no sweets, nothing. So he went and woke up Holy Mother, saying, Sri Ramakrishna is hungry. And quickly, now, if somebody says something like this in the middle of the night, hey, your husband is hungry, you see what happens. The wife will kind of... Holy Mother knew his spiritual moods. So quickly she goes, she starts cooking farina pudding. Farina pudding is a rich kind of, with all that milk and butter and all this. So she cooked. Golap Ma helped her. And about 2 pounds of farina pudding, Golap Ma brings it to Sri Ramakrishna. Now, his nephew had already placed a seat for him to sit down, and she saw Sri Ramakrishna. He was pacing back and forth in his room, and she was startled to notice that it was at dead of the night. The night was calm and silent. It seemed to her that the master's body had become much bigger in both height and bulk, as if he was not a mortal of this earth, but some god from heaven come in the guise of a human being to this earthly sphere, so full of misery, wailing, and death. So here Sri Ramakrishna revealed his own divine nature to her. Otherwise, ordinarily, Sri Ramakrishna was always, that helpless look. He was thin and weak and not very, you can say, happy with a lot of people. He used to stay away from big crowds. Only in some cases he used to. But then here, this is found even in the life of Swami Vivekananda, even in the life of Holy Mother. In certain moods, they appeared extremely, big, and the dimensions had changed. It's not one time, often. In fact, with Swami Vivekananda, year in the US, when one of his admirers, who later who was a disciple of Swami Abhedananda, he saw him, my God, the person, how could he be? Just now you are sitting and talking and just with tousled hair, and you are smoking a kind of a hookah, and now he goes and appears like a god. So it's the bhava, the mind, that is in that state of realization. The body changes. Like suppose if I'm angry, you know what happens? Everything changes. We thought that Swami was very nice. Looks like, see that. It's always like. So there are different moods that changes your features and your body. And a spiritual mood of this caliber changes you. So here she says, she was awestruck and hesitating. She went near and placed a bowl of farina pudding in front of the master. The master sat down to eat and gradually ate all of it under the influence of that spiritual mood. He generally used to eat, just nibble at food, take something a little. Golap Ma later described her vision of the Kundalini power accepting ablations in the master's body. We hear about Kundalini and Kundalini. Now let us see what really Kundalini is. It seemed to me that as soon as the master put food in his mouth, the snake-shaped Kundalini Shakti within him was aroused and snatched at the food and devoured it. The master asked me, "Well, can you tell me who is eating? Myself or someone else?" I told the master what I had seen. He was pleased to hear it and said, "You are right, you are right. You are fortunate that you have seen it and understood it." Then he smiled. This is the Kundalini. It is the power of the universe. Like we are trying to awaken our dormant powers, and that is the Kundalini. It's coiled up. It means coiled up in the sense it's sleeping. We somehow struggle to awaken it. Swami Shivananda says, Sri Ramakrishna, by his spiritual practices, awakened the Brahma Kundalini, that is the dormant powers of the universe. So the macrocosm and the microcosm. So the macrocosmic dormant spiritual powers were awakened by Sri Ramakrishna. We wonder, what did he do there, Dakshineshwar? He practiced spiritual disciplines. Yeah, this is what he was actually doing. This is one of the works of an avatar. Awakens. So, in other cases also we have seen, you would actually see that power eating. So, it means that that power had awakened, and that was the spiritual mood that he was in, and he used to eat. Okay. She was, as we know, Holy Mother's, we can say, guardian, confidant, everything. She also used to carry Sri Ramakrishna's food to him, cleaned his room, and helped Holy Mother with the cooking and household work. Since Golap Ma was a little older than some of the other women, she was very free with the master and the young boy disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. Many years later, she said, "By the master's grace, I saw the living form of my chosen deity there." These people, they see God directly. He says, "After my first meeting with the master, I used to see for a while a little boy resembling the master moving with me. On another occasion, Golap Ma saw the master pacing back and forth at midnight in an ecstatic mood, Dakshineshwar. He was pacing back and forth in the temple, in the concert, not in the concert. There was, the main temple is a sanctum sanctorum, and then there's a small kind of passageway, and then there's a temple where everybody sits down. So he was pacing up and down, and she says, then all of a sudden, she saw the Divine Mother in his place, and this frightened her. Now imagine, when you see the Divine Mother, instead of Sri Ram, you see first Sri Ramakrishna pacing up and down, and suddenly transform into the Divine Mother, pacing up and down. This is how it all began. With a bang. We call it a Big Bang. Oh yeah, this started with Big Bang. The Big Bang of spirituality. So, we'll take a smaller part here. And Sri Ramakrishna was so pleased with her service. One thing about her, she was very outspoken. And she was no respecter of persons. She used to tell the truth, and sometimes even an unpleasant truth. That made her very unpopular. People used to avoid her. Yeah. You know, in the scriptures, it's saying, you must speak the truth, but don't speak an unpleasant truth. Speak a truth that's pleasant and speak it lovingly. Golap never followed all these things. She kept on saying things. But that was because, not because she wanted to hurt people or something like that. Yes, she was established in truth. And this came out spontaneously. Of course, sometimes she put a foot in her mouth. You know, at times you must be careful. It's better to keep quiet. There's a kind of saying there. It's better to be silent than to be thought of as a fool, than to open your mouth and remove all doubts. So, but Golapma was like that. And so she had a lot of devotees who used to avoid her. And she had her detractors. And no, Holy Mother loved her, but sometimes she also was so sometimes blunt with Holy Mother also. But Holy Mother used to forgive her always, constantly. So this much for today. We will take the rest of our life up next Friday, because it's very interesting. We like to go a little slowly. And we have seen that Holy Mother also used to consult her often, because she was very practical and she was full of energy. It's not only she was just serving Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna. She used to, after Swami, Sri Ramakrishna passed away, she used to be immersed in her spiritual practices. People think like, oh yeah, you know, if you're busy, all the time you're busy, that's spirituality. That is the first door. Karma Yoga is the first door to higher forms of yoga. People, they jump to the higher levels, and you know what happens? Nothing happens. So you have to start with Karma Yoga. And that reminds me, tomorrow we have Karma Yoga at a retreat at Snohomish County, Arlington, Tapovan. So those who want to practice Karma Yoga can go out there, practice. Because work can bring into focus many of your energies, and that can then be employed stage by stage into internalizing your conceptions of God. So this was beautiful rose, Golap Sundari. And yes, she was a very beautiful, precious gem in the whole history of spirituality. Because you see, what happens is, if you see the history of the world, you see great kings and emperors and generals. And what have they done? They have only butchered, killed, conquered, pillaged, and yet their names are in the books, history books, unknown to them, unknown to people. There are these great spiritual personalities that are really transforming the spiritual history of humanity. And the history of humanity is a spiritual unfoldment. You will see their lives inspiring millions and millions of people. Oh yes, what is Western civilization without Christianity? Try it out. Nothing. So religion was at the background of every culture and every civilization. And these were made by all these great spiritual personalities. Swami Shardananda, one time, when he had gone to Rome in the Vatican, he had a vision of the many saints. Generally, we'll see all those huge pillars and, whether Corinthian or Grecian pillars, but he saw the whole church, symbolically, the whole church, being supported on the shoulders of all the saints. That was very symbolic. So every culture and every civilization, everything, their spiritual values are held by a few people who live that spiritual life, and they leave a mark, a spiritual mark on the spiritualist. So this is deep history. There's economic history, and there's a military history, and the royal history, and all these kind of various layers are there. Yeah? Spiritual history is a deep history, and these are the molders of that spiritual history. So her name and her realizations and her contributions will remain as long as Sri Ramakrishna's name will be there. So we are, you can say, we are fortunate that we are studying such a great life. It will do us immense good to know and appreciate how these people living their unknown lives have yet contributed to the welfare of the world. Om, peace, peace, peace. Okay, the questions here, a few questions here. How can we receive grace from Sri Ramakrishna like Golap Ma did when she touched her? Ha! Everybody is waiting for that here. Well, see, it's like this. It's very easy. Make God the center of your life. Right now, your identity, your ego, etc., is the center of your life. And everybody else are just contributors or embellishers of this center. Switch it, make God the center, and then you see. Then, if you can do that, you will find grace. You will find Him. He has touched you with His love. In the Bhagavad Gita, I say, the Supreme Being sits in the hearts of all beings. And worlds, all of them, like puppets mounted on a machine. Ishvara sarva bhutanam riddeshe arjuna brahma. So this is the huge universal machine that's going on. And who's the mover? God is the prime mover. We are just, so if you understand this, then He has touched you. Yoginma, Golapma, Gopalma, all the direct disciples, highly evolved and pure. Was Thakur here to save those people who were already perfect? Ha! Ha! Okay, that's a nice question. But the song says, Mama Deena Bandhu. Okay, yeah, they were highly evolved. What makes you think that you cannot evolve spiritually? They have come to help us in our own evolution, spiritual evolution. So these were role models for all of us. Their realizations were not only for them. Those realizations are helping you. So remember that, yeah, they had attained perfection, highly evolved, so attained perfection. That realization of their perfection is helping you evolve. This is the law in spiritual life. The best way is to help others spiritually. And there are three types of charity, Swami Vivekananda says. The charity that you give in food and clothes, etc., etc. That's a lowest type of charity. Everybody knows this type of charity. The second type of charity is like when you save somebody's life. That's a higher form of charity. The third highest form of charity is to bring knowledge to others. So it's called Annadan, Prandan, Vidyadan. So these people, by their lives, have contributed to enriching your own life, to evolving your own life. So that is why they are necessary. And then, that's why you need to study. So was Thakur here to save these people who were already? No, Sri Ramakrishna is here to save all of us, don't worry. To make us perfect. That's the idea. That is goal. So stand in queue. I remember there was one Swami for years. He was a kind of humorist. So he said, we were young. Hey, have you seen God? So if it is yes, okay, I'm just behind you. I'm in the queue. And if you say no, fall behind me. I'm ahead of you. So Shobha is asking, so fall in line. So the line starts with all these Golap Ma, Gopal Ma, Yogin Ma, etc. So you also in the line. Okay. Yeah, so why not? So, do you have any questions here? Okay. Before we can sign off, like I mentioned, tomorrow is Karma Yoga Day at the retreat. All the devotees are welcome. And just go to our website to get an idea of what exactly we want. And those who have received notifications, you know how to get sack lunch, etc., etc. Work clothes. Sunday is the topic for the Sunday talk is on Shankaracharya, because on Tuesday it's his birthday. And so I kind of decided to have the talk 2 days before his birthday, Tuesday. He shook the world of philosophy. That's what he did. I still am trying to, after 40 years of studying him, 35, I'm still astounded at how could he write all this so subtle, this philosophy called Advaita Vedanta. So we see his life. We'll highlight some of the salient features in his life and his works. That's on Sunday, 10 a.m. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.